Hi, my name is Cliff Edwards. I'm retired from the Michigan State Police, and following that service, I served with the federal government as a law enforcement officer for 11 years. I am the author of the Paths Cross series, and the prequel to that series is the book Heart Shots. And I subtitle Heart Shots as a dark day in the history of the Michigan and Indiana State Police. I am from Lenawee County, Michigan. And in Lenawee County, there's been one Michigan State Police trooper that's been murdered in the line of duty. That drew my attention. And by chance and circumstance, I was to meet the widow of that trooper. That trooper's name was Trooper Dugald Pellet. His wife, a most remarkable woman, had kept a scrapbook that had helped her deal with the pain of her loss and to introduce her son's father to him. Her son was only about 2 years old when his father was killed. She shared that scrapbook with me, and when she did, I felt fate tap me on the shoulder and say, "Cliff, this is going to be your next book." It would be the 5th book in my series. So I embarked in 2019 to research that book. And in October of 2019, I came to Scottsburg, Indiana, visited the spots where the incidents occurred in Indiana. Shootouts 3, 4, and 5 occurred, shootout 3 was in Scott County, and shootouts 4 and 5 were in Jennings County. In shootout number 3, Trooper William Kellems was killed. So in the book Heart Shots, it features all 5 of those shots. It features the events that lead up to that dreadful day and the aftermath of that day. I knew that Trooper Dugald Pellet had been killed in Lenawee County, Michigan. I had no idea of the circumstances leading to it and following it. As bizarre as I thought the events in Michigan were, they got even more bizarre in Indiana. And then the aftermath of it was stunning, surprising. Trooper Kellems became an Indiana State Trooper on November 15th, 1956. He was married to a woman named Alice. They had no children. He lived in Scottsburg. On that day, as fate would have it, he traveled to ISP headquarters to take his final, and I'm not real clear on this, oral board or test to get promoted to Trooper First Class. As I understand it, my research says that he drove Alice up to Indianapolis, maybe left her to visit with her parents while he met this test. Then the two of them returned home. He then began the afternoon shift and was solo patrol and learned of a be on the lookout from Michigan for a red and white Buick containing 2 men and maybe a woman that were involved in the murder of Trooper Dugald Pellet in Michigan. When he got that word, it would appear to me that he stopped home for dinner. He shared that with Alice. He visited the Charlestown Post detective who happened to live in Scottsburg and briefed him on the developments. He stopped into the all-night service station in Scottsburg and told his friends there, Barney Pruitt and Leonard Hurst, to be on the lookout for this red and white Buick, and should they see it, to call the Charlestown Post. He then ventured on patrol north on 31, undoubtedly on the lookout for this vehicle. And lo and behold, as the end of the day nears, the end of his shift nears, he spots a red and white Buick going south. He follows it south. It doesn't have Michigan plates on it. It has Indiana's plates on it. It's unknown whether he knew that it might now have Indiana plates. He followed the vehicle south, and these criminals that were driving this car, who had committed over 20 armed robberies in 14 states in the last 3 months, were, and demonstrate this day to be highly proficient at being violent criminals. They don't speed away when the patrol car falls behind them. They maintain the speed limit. They turn west on Moon Show Road, I think it is. Trooper Kellems follows them. They then turn south. Trooper Kellems follows them. They get back to the main east-west road through Scottsburg. They turn back east towards Scottsburg. Trooper Kellems radios Charlestown. He asks or requests that Scottsburg PD back him up on a stop that he's going to make in Scottsburg. Well, back in 1957, radio systems weren't as they are now. So what did that entail? He called Charlestown Post. Charlestown Post had to telephone Scottsburg PD. Scottsburg PD had to radio their patrol car. Most likely they only had one patrol out. Nevertheless, by the time Trooper Kellems got to Scottsburg, Scottsburg PD hadn't got to the meet spot. The suspects turned south on 31. Trooper Kellems followed them. He had to make a decision. Am I going to stop them in the perceived safety of this town or follow them into the countryside where it's dark? He chose to stop him in front of the gas station, the service station that he had warned his friends to be on the lookout. So when Trooper Kellems, having followed the car this long, this far, hadn't speeded, hadn't made any violations, it pulls over. It has on a Indiana license plate, and very likely the driver, which was Victor Whitley, it's very possible that he had a wig on, making Trooper Kellems think it was a female. According to witnesses, Trooper Kellems approached the car not in a very defensive position, and as he neared the car, shots rang out, and he was shot fatally in the heart and in the hand, and stumbled back and down. Now, our good citizens across the street, his friends Barney Pruitt and Leonard Hurst, hear and see this. They run to his aid as the suspects flee south. Trooper Kellems returns fire, but he's dying, he's going down. Barney Pruitt and Leonard Hurst are joined by Melvin Ray. Melvin Ray stays with Trooper Kellems while Hurst and Pruitt give chase to the murderers using Trooper Kellems' patrol car and revolver. Melvin Ray comforts Trooper Kellems as he meets death. And in doing so, he loosens his gun belt, which enables him to breathe a little easier. And it brings tears to my eyes now. But Melvin Ray describes, he goes, Trooper Kellems was my friend. We loafed together. I was like, is that an Indiana word, we loafed together? I later learned it's like, you meet at the gas station and you have a Coke and you talk, you visit, that's loafing. I go, okay. He goes, yeah, we loafed together. And he goes, and he was always smiling, and he died with a smile on his face. I sum up the book with 10 hours, 9 heroes, 5 heart shots, 3 abductions, 2 widows, and 1 fatherless son. Every time I thought I had my research done, another thing would come up. I called them God winks. It's like, Mike, I can't believe this came up. I was a cold case homicide detective in the state police. This is the coldest case I've ever worked on. This one was over 60 years old. But the things that would surface after 60-some years was just remarkable. So what was the most amazing thing? Well, one question we have not answered is how Victor Whitley was released. The Michigan State Police, had put detainers on him in the Indiana prison system that if he was ever to be released, we were to be notified. That didn't happen, and it was by happenstance that we learned about his release some 20 years later. And by that time, any and all witnesses that Michigan had passed and weren't available, so the case couldn't proceed. That Victor Whitley got clemency after serving over about 22 years in prison. That's what I say in the book. It's divided into 3 parts. The final part is aftermath. It's surprising and interesting. What can one draw? I mean, we see how technology and equipment and techniques have improved immensely since then, but so is the other side of the coin. It's an arms race. How ineffective ammunition was back then. I know one of our detectives deduced that the only bullets that penetrated cars were shot through the windows. They didn't go through this with the type of ammo they had back then. The book is the tactics that these two desperados had, which they repeated over and over that day effectively, were very interesting. The shootout at the Vernon Bridge, which is shootouts 4 and 5. Shootout 4 is at the south end. Shootout 5 is at the north end. Is, as I said, just gets more and more bizarre, and then ends with a deputy kidnapped and they're driving off into the darkness. Directly involved in this, there is only one person alive, and that's Victor Whitley. He was one of the criminals of the day. The last I checked, he is still alive. I have interviewed him. The wife of Michigan Trooper Pellet is still alive. So the night before, the evening of September 29th, 1957, Trooper Pellet is on patrol with his good partner, Warren Hutchinson. They're working the afternoon shift. And as the shift ends up, out of nowhere, Trooper Pellet says to his partner, "Hutch," and Hutch goes, "Yeah, what do you want, Duke?" He goes, "Hutch, if something happens to me out here, will you make sure my family's taken care of?" And Hutch goes, "You bet you, partner, and you'll do the same for me?" "And you know I will, Duke. You know I will, Hutch." That was almost the final conversation those two had. The next day, Hutch is called out at home to man a roadblock, and in 3 days, he is the escort of his good partner Duke's body to Lansing for burial. The other thing that is amazing, and it's my 9th hero in the book, the 9th hero is a female civilian. And the two, after killing Trooper Kellems, so they've left Trooper Vogel for dead, he's not. They've killed Trooper Pellet in Michigan, those two. They've killed Trooper Kellems. They're doing what they do. They always do double backs when they have an engagement. And they know they need a new getaway car because the police are looking for this red and white Buick. So it's dark in the middle of nowhere on State Route 3. It's foggy. And they force this woman, this 20-year-old woman who has her infant child in the car, her sister-in-law with her infant child. They're just returning from visiting their husband at Fort Campbell. They force her off the road. Taylor comes back doing what he does, and he goes, "Indiana State Police, I need to see your driver's license." Well, she knew something was up. So as they jump out of the car, they forced her off the road. She locks the doors. She rolls the window down just a crack. "Indiana State Police, I need to see your driver's license." She goes, "Okay, just a minute." She acts like she's going to she hadn't taken it out of gear, get her license. When Taylor looks up, she pulls a reverse on him. She floors it. Her words are, "I thought I jerked his hand off." And she tears off north on State Route 3. They're infuriated. They have just been beat at their own game. And they give chase. And she leads them into the roadblock, manned by Trooper Pond and the Sheriff Dudley in Jennings County. Bingo, shootout number 4. But she turned the tide of momentum. Up until that point, they were winning every round. But then it turned, the tide turned. So thank you for your hospitality. It's great to come and visit your State Police Museum.